On May 25th, 1961, President JFK addressed the United States Congress and declared,
"I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning it safely to Earth." Apollo 11 was launched by a Saturn V rocket. The rocket plus spacecraft stood 363 feet tall.
First, we'll talk about the rocket. The rocket was broken up into 3 stages. The first stage, the big bottom part, was called the S1C. It contained most of the fuel and was powered by 5 F1 rockets. Fully fueled at launch, it weighed over 5 million pounds. The second stage, the middle part, was called the S2 and was powered by slightly smaller J2 rockets. The third stage, the upper part, just before the panels, was called the S4B and was powered by one J2 rocket engine.
The spacecraft was located at the top and also was broken into 3 parts. The lunar module, or LEM's call sign was Eagle. If you have ever heard someone say the Eagle has landed, this is where it came from. The service module hosed the engines that were necessary to enter and leave the lunar orbit. The fuel cells, oxygen, and other electrical components. The command module, which is where the 3 astronauts spent most of their time. The service module and command module were referred as the CSM. Its call sign was Columbia. At the top was the launch escape system and was designed to rapidly take the command module far away from the rocket if something went wrong during takeoff.
Boom! Astronauts Neil A. Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins rode an elevator up the tower and entered the command module through the White Room. The launch umbilical tower had 9 service arms, and 4 of the arms moved out of the way before the launch, and the other 5 quickly moved away during the launch.
3, 2, igniting engines, 1, blast off.
The first stage shuts off at a height of 42 miles. Explosive bolts detonate, releasing the first stage, which falls back into the Atlantic Ocean. Then the second stage rockets fire. The launch escape system is no longer needed and is also released. The second stage shuts off at 9 minutes 12 seconds at a height of 109 miles. The second stage is released and the third stage fires up. The astronauts will now begin in a parking orbit. The third stage shuts off at 11 minutes and 39 seconds at the height of 118 miles.
After orbiting the Earth a few times, confirming that all systems are good, we are ready for translunar injection. The third stage ignites again for about 6 minutes and sends us on a path toward the moon.
The lunar module adapter panels detach, exposing the lunar module. The CSM rotates 180 degrees in order to dock with the LEM and pull it out. The spacecraft would be put into a slow roll called the passive thermal control to distribute heat evenly. It was nicknamed the barbecue roll.
If systems were a go, they entered into lunar orbit. This is called the lunar orbit insertion. The CSM engines fired up for about 6 minutes to slow the spacecraft down. The spacecraft orbited about 30 times, passing views of the landing site in the southern Sea of Tranquility.
Aldrin and Armstrong entered GSM after all systems are checked. The CSM and the LM separate.
The LEM must get a safe distance away from the CSM before firing the descent engine. This is called the descent orbit insertion.
Armstrong reported that the target was in an area with boulders. He took a semi-automatic control. Finally, the landing light turned on and Buzz Aldrin said the first words from the surface.
Contact light!
6 hours later, Armstrong stepped out and said his famous words.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. The two astronauts took video and samples before returning to the lab. They were on the surface for about 21 and a half hours.
Now it's time to head back to Earth. The LEM's descent stage will get left behind on the moon. The ascent stage has its own propulsion system. The ascent stage will fire up for 7.5 minutes and gets us into lunar orbit. After docking, all valuables are transferred to the command module. The LEM ascent stage is now released and left floating. Lyra probably crashed somewhere on the moon. On the far side of the moon, the service module fires up for about 2.5 minutes and puts the CSM into a return path. It was a 3-day journey to get back home.
Once back in Earth's orbit, the CM and SM separate, exposing the bottom. The heat shield protects the spacecraft and astronauts from the enormous heat caused by passing through the atmosphere.
Down below, the aircraft USS Hornet awaits as the recovery ship. When the command module reaches about 2 miles above the Earth's surface, parachutes deploy. Home at last!
President Nixon welcomed the astronauts to Earth.
As a result of what you've done, the world has never been closer together before.